Hey friends, Kris here from the kitchen of our ministry guest house, continuing our teaching on the healing miracles of Jesus. Be healed. Matthew chapter 8, verse 14 and 15 today, the healing of Peter's mother-in-law who is suffering from a horrible fever. Now I can see why Jesus called Peter to be an apostle, because he's got a mother-in-law living with him and a sick one at that, and he still keeps a patient, good attitude. That's worth something, okay? Well, let's get into this word. First of all, good people can suffer bad circumstances. You know, Peter was Jesus' right-hand man. He'll be the top apostle soon, and yet he's got sickness in his home. Now, that doesn't mean you need to tolerate sickness. So, Psalm 91 and verse 10 says, "No evil shall befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling." So rebuke it. However, sickness got into Job's home. It got into Peter's home. Everybody watching today has had fever at one time or another, and it's got into your home. So you need to understand that we have authority over fever. Good people suffer bad things. Second, if we don't intercede for our own, who's going to do it? Peter pleaded on behalf of his mother-in-law. It says in Luke 4 and verse 38 that he made request of him for her. In other words, he stood in the gap and said, "Jesus, my mom-in-law needs healing." He interceded. You know, there's another story, we'll look at it next time, on their faith. When Jesus saw their faith, it's a corporate thing. We need to believe for other people when they can't believe for their own selves. And then third, Jesus crossed every potential barrier to get to this woman. Hey, he's done the same to get to you. What kind of barriers are you willing to cross to get to him? You know, the leper, he had a medical barrier. Unclean, unclean, stay back. But Jesus crossed the barrier. The Roman centurion servant, that's a racial or a nationality barrier. Jews didn't get along with Romans, and yet Jesus crossed that barrier. And in Peter's mother-in-law, she's a woman. That's a sexual or a social barrier. And yet Jesus treated her just like anybody else, broke through the barrier and touched her life. Well, he broke through the barrier for you. What barriers are your faith going to break through? And then number 4, you've heard the adage, the doctor will see you now. Well, verse 14 says, when Jesus saw her, he touched her. There's something about the omniscient eyes of Jesus that sees right through people. He sees the potential. He sees you healed before you even get started. And that puts a new light on the doctor will see you now. I don't know if you've heard of this new show that's on. I don't know if it's ABC, CBS, but it's called The Good Doctor. I watched it last week. Well, it's an autistic young man who's went through medical school, and with his genius IQ, even though he has other problems, is able to see things that other doctors are unable to see, and a lot of people get healed because of it. Well, let me tell you, Jesus is not only the good shepherd, he is the good doctor. He's the great physician, and he sees things in your life that nobody else could even remotely see. Thank God for Christ. And then number 5, he has impeccable bedside manners. Notice this, when he saw her, he touched her hand. Notice, he didn't lay his hand on her head and start shaking it and rebuking devils. He just touched her by the hand. In other words, there's something that happens when hand meets hand. Only in Mark 1 and verse 31, it goes a step farther and said he grabbed her by the hand and lifted her up. In other words, fever put her down, but faith will pick her up. And then number 6, we have dominion over every sickness. In Luke 4 and verse 39, Jesus stood over her and rebuked the fever, and it left. When he stood over her, that pictures the towering presence of Jesus Christ. And I want to tell you something. He's above and not below. And you have the same dominion over the fish of the sea, the fowls of the air, and for sure over fever and sickness. Take dominion. And that will close with number 7. Healing giving should result in thanksgiving. After she was healed, she arose and ministered unto them. She cooked him a meal and blessed Jesus. Well, the Greek word is diakonia. She did deaconess work. She blessed somebody. Listen, God didn't heal you so you could go back to laying on the couch and gabbing on the cell phone and running around on shopping sprees. He healed you so that you can be a blessing to testify and release the healing that's come into you to heal somebody else. Healing giving should result in thanksgiving. And I'm thankful for you being with us today. Like if you like, share this with a friend, and tune in tomorrow as we study more on Be Healed. So, be healed.